The federal government has expressed its willingness to reintroduce toll collections on designated dual carriageways across the country. This development is coming 18 years after the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, dismantled all toll plazas on federal roads across the country in 2003. According to the Ministry of Works and Housing, only 5,005 kilometers of dual carriageways out of the 35,000 kilometers of federal roads in the country, that is 14.3%, will be eligible for tolling, even as diplomatic, military, paramilitary vehicles, as well as tricycles and motorcycles will be exempted from the toll fees, as cars will pay 200 naira, SUVs and jeeps will pay 300 naira, private buses will pay 300 naira, commercial buses will pay 150 naira, luxury buses and trucks will pay 500 naira. While some Nigerians support the move, others were quick to condemn it, alleging that the government is looking for another opportunity to further impoverish ordinary Nigerians. Well, joining me live in the studio to look at this and, of course, what this means, make more sense of it, is Executive Director at DMA Group, Mr. Gbolahan Olojede. It's good to see you this Friday.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
When I was reading the last part of my intro, I noticed that move. Like, everyone believes that government has come again. But first, what's the reason? They removed it in the first place.
Correct. And
now reintroducing. What has changed at the moment that we now have to get the toll gates back to be functional?
Okay, when it was removed, part of the reasons were around the fact that the roads were not being maintained. So you're asking yourself, why should I pay toll if this road is not even motorable? Number two is that the tolls, a lot of the toll that were being collected were going into private pockets. There were leakage issues. Then you have the issue of, okay, the little that is even being collected is going into a general government account where it can probably be shared out to, used for government purpose. It wasn't being deployed to establishing a sustainably motorable road. So it has failed. It has failed to perform its function. Having said that, maybe it was still a mistake to have to dismantle. We could have stopped and rejig the structure, but that wasn't what happened. We removed those things. And then we woke up 18 years later, having realized that the government has no financial capacity to continue to get those roads in a motorable condition. We must cut private capital. We must cut the efficiency of the private sector to come into that space. And if we're going to do that, there are some changes that will need to happen.
Changes indeed, but let's also go back to the human angle of it.
Okay.
That's talking about adding another burden to us. We are thinking maybe very soon subsidy will go, we'll pay more for PMS. Now we'll now have to pay tolls again. So what do you think? How can government correct this impression if truly that's not what's going to happen?
That is, it has to be by engagement, I believe. This engagement has started at certain levels. I believe they've been engaging with, according to the ministry, they had engagement with NLC, with the road transport unions, the NURTW, RTA, and all those guys. But I'm not sure how much of the engagement has happened with the other road users as well, apart from the survey. Now, it is actually net money in the pocket of the road user. But how do you get them to see this? That is the real communication issue we have here. And I'll use a very good example, which is Lagos-Ibadan. Lagos-Ibadan might not even be one of the ones to be told. Anyway, I'm just saying. But let's use Lagos-Ibadan. A few days ago, I just checked Lagos-Ibadan road. He gave me 3 alternatives. He said Express E1, A1, and E1 plus A1, which means I can either go on this expressway or I can go via Ikorodu and I'll still end up in Ibadan. Or there's a way you can juggle both. You do part on this road and then part on the other road. What is very interesting is that the longest of these 3 options was the expressway. It was the longest in terms of number of kilometers. But in terms of the time to get there, it was the shortest. It was less than half of the other 2. Why is it that way? It is because the motorability of a road is important to how long you spend on that road. When a journey of 1 hour becomes a journey of 2 hours, your fuel cost automatically doubles. So if I'm supposed to use 1,500 fuel from Lagos to Ibadan for a 1 hour journey, and I end up spending 2 hours, I'm paying 3,000 for the fuel already. Yeah. I'm not talking of the man hours that I've lost. I'm not talking of the wear and tear on the vehicle. I'm not talking of the health implication of staying in that traffic. Those things, you can even decide to put figures to them if you like. But the one that is so glaring is just the fuel, because it's easy to see that a 1 hour journey for 1,500 fuel becomes a 3,000 fuel if that journey doubles in timing. So if I'm now asked to pay a toll, and we ensure, that's a proviso, very important proviso, that toll will ensure that I have a sustainably motorable road. It is net money in my pocket as a road user. Even as a commercial guy, he knows that he probably can now do 2 trips where he used to do 1.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for everybody. And I also don't think we have much option under the circumstances we have found ourselves in which there is no money. Government can simply not do it.
That's the reality on ground, really. I totally agree with that. Let's now look at the willingness to pay survey. You know, we touched on that, saying how the institutions were made up of those that were met and all of that. You've actually touched on that one way or the other. But I'm looking at the price regime now. What do you think? Should I ask this way? Do you think it's really fair on Nigerians? You think of SUV users and those that are using the public buses and which of it. What do you think about the pricing?
I think the pricing took into consideration the various citizens along the ladder. That's why you have exemptions, which are all these bicycle, tricycles, which are exempted. When you now look at those people that have to pay, you find out that the commercial buses have the lowest pay. So essentially, the intention is when you say someone with a bicycle or with a tricycle, with a motorcycle, do not have to pay exemption, it means you're looking at the category that is at the lower end of the ladder, lower rung of the ladder, and you're saying, no, let's not put additional burden on them. And then on those that will pay, you look at the commercial bus, and it is the lowest. So the capacity to pay seems to have been put inside those rates, which is why commercial bus is lowest, and then those trucks, which are essentially commercial, the trucks and the luxurious buses, those are the ones with the highest. Then the guy using an SUV is paying twice what the guy in the commercial bus, what the commercial bus guys will pay. Okay. So there is an element of capacity to pay already built into that rate, so that it doesn't become burdensome on the lower end of the.
So we have dual carriageways now to be told, according to this.
Only dual carriage, and not all the dual carriages.
What do you also think about that selection?
It's important because. Number one, the roads that are not dual carriage, tolling them puts an additional burden in a way on the road user. But when a road is already dual carriage, the ones going ahead on the other one coming out on the other side, it is easier to manage at the toll gate. Otherwise, everything becomes messy. Then, when you want to roll out a program like this as well, you have to be cautious and approach it in phases. So look at which one is more feasible, more comfortable to deal with. When you finish that, then you can think of any other thing that comes to you. You draw on the lessons from that one and know what else you can do.
Can states just wake up one morning and say, okay, they want to decide to also toll roads under their jurisdiction? And if that happens, how do we approach upgrading road infrastructure one way or the other if we have all of these issues? Because I'm talking about looking at tax burden again on Nigerians.
You see, yes, states can do it, but states must be willing to understand the thinking behind what the federal government is doing, and also be willing to put in the works. Number one, the federal government has said this tolling will be on dual carriageways. It said it will be on motorable road. The roads must first be motorable before you can toll. So if you have state governments who are saying, oh, I have this road that is bad and for a while, but we can make it better, and we can go through a transparent and credible process to arrive at what could be a toll, why not? Why not? Well, I know a lot of them will not be able to do. Apart from people like Lagos. Lagos is ahead of even the federal government when it comes to tolling.
Of course.
And they have successfully pulled it.
Of course. Now, we're talking about revenue here now. We know government is broke. It's a global issue. Everyone needs money at this time. Not to talk of the Delta variant of COVID-19 that is threatening supply chain and everywhere. In terms of revenue goals now, what do you think will be different about this? We talked earlier about what happened to the previous scheme. So what do you think will be different about this? That transparency remains key.
You see, some of the roads that will be involved in this first phase will actually be those roads that are already under the HDMI consideration.
Okay.
And the HDMI is essentially, concessioning those roads to the private sector. So private sector is used to those kind of things. They can handle the efficiency of a tolled road. What will become important for those ones that are in the hands of the private sector is the regulator. The regulator, which in this case will be ICRC, must be able to ensure that both parties, the people, all the parties involved, all the stakeholders, the concessionaire does not become a lord and master after a contract is signed and road is built. So all the things they said they were going to do, they will do. And if there are things on the side of the government, because sometimes the reason you see the private sector behave the way they behave is that government has made some promises which it refuses to keep. So government keeps the end of it, and the private sector keeps their own end of it. The toll I see now, if we're going to put all the roads, make them all motorable, the toll might not even carry the cost of ensuring that sustainably, while at the same time, it will need a little more. So under the HDMI, the belief is that is an entire gateway that you are concessioning, so that the people can make money from other things apart from toll. If we're going to put everything on toll, it won't be all those numbers you're seeing. It will be very burdensome on the people. That's the reality.
Now, you've talked about HDMI, and it takes me back to the fact that from day one, this administration has been focused on infrastructure development and all of that. And we can see some of it. Look at the rail system.
Correct.
A lot of investment, even the power sector. Obviously, we can see all of this. But now, the initiative to me seems to be much. We've talked about HDMI. We know tax credit, what's happening on the Apapa-Oshodi Expressway, the likes of the Dangotes and all of this one. Tax credit one, right? You see, then we also have some under the NSIA. I think a lot of work is also going on.
Work on Amadou Bello towards the Bar Beach. And
towards the Bar Beach, Ikoyem Island. That's also there. Now, I'm looking at all of this. Are you sure we're not going to be contradicting each other when it gets to a point?
No. There is so much to be done that there is enough to go around for everybody, every of those initiatives, even including commercial banks. There are commercial banks now who are saying, we also want to do infrastructure. We want to make provision for investing in infrastructure. Because there is so much gap in infrastructure, there is a whole lot to be done. Just imagine that America today has an infrastructure level that is way above our level. And America just passed a bill for $1 trillion US to be put in that same infrastructure. So just imagine how much gap we have and how much money we need to put in that space. So all of these things can go on simultaneously without anyone clashing with any. Just like the tax credit is doing the Bagada or the Woroshoki way, and the Sukuk is on Bar Beach, and all the other ones are working in several areas. They will work together. As a matter of fact, this tolling policy will help to activate some of those initiatives you're talking about. When you want to raise a fund now for the infraco, okay, maybe government will put in a seed capital, then it raises fund from private sector and everybody wants to put in money. Those people are interested in how will my money come back.
Yes.
So part of what the consideration for financial modeling for some of these transactions is that tolling policy. So it becomes a very important thing that we need to execute to be able to move forward.
Now, let's now look at what aspects of this policy do you consider the major highlights, and in what ways do you think it will benefit, of course, Nigeria and Nigerians? They would like to know this.
I think, number one, there's a lot of resistance, typically for anything that says, oh, bring money. So we need to be able to let the citizens know that this is not net money out of their pocket, it's money back into their pocket, because they already paid these tolls, wherever there are no tolls. I saw I don't know whether it was your station or other station, sometimes in 2020, they were interviewing trailer drivers along a path in Niger State. Those guys have been on that bad road for 3 days. So if somebody is now saying, you will pay toll, I will make this road sustainably motorable for you, it's a good thing to happen. Number two is that it should help us to begin to realize that government has no money. we cannot continue to run this like a communism. If we're going to get things moving, we must cut private capital and efficiency and deploy it in that space so that we can have more infrastructure that will deliver things for us. Yeah.
Now, let's wrap up this way. If government were to amend any part of this policy, what do you think advice should be done, and what areas of the policy do you think should government improve upon? Because clarity is also very important. Nigerians need to really understand what is in there for us and what should be done right.
You see, it becomes a little bit early to start thinking of amending a policy that has not even taken off.
Okay.
Like the tolling policy is just the high level, the broad highlight that has been taken. There is still the nitty-gritty that needs to be worked out. You know, somebody was asking, okay, if you say bike should not pay, what if I put a BMW of 20 million on that road?
Yeah.
Why should that guy not pay? Because it's a bike? So the nitty-gritty of how those things will work. And then we execute. It is the lessons from execution that will form the basis for amendment of those policies.
So at the moment, let's just see what plays out.
Let's see, let's hope, let's support it, and let's make it happen.
It's always a pleasure having you in the studio, honestly. I appreciate this. Executive Director, DMA Group, Mr. Olojede. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.